In the beginning, there was nothing.
One eternity later.
One day, God decided to create the universe. In that universe, he created the earth. On the earth was plants, animals, skies, and oceans. God decided to create a person in his own image. God called this man Adam. When Adam was sleeping one day, God carefully removed one of his ribs. Using that rib, he created Eve. God decided these people would rule over animals and that everything was very good. The only rule God made for his people in the garden, called the Garden of Eden, was to not eat one type of fruit that grew on one of the many fruit-bearing trees. Now would be a good time to mention the evilest being in the universe, Satan. His name used to be Lucifer, though, and he lived peacefully with the angels in heaven, along with God. But he was very jealous of all the attention and power humans were getting, and tempted Eve into eating the fruit. Eve liked the fruit, so she gave some to Adam. Immediately after Adam ate the fruit, they both realized they were naked. They hid behind some trees in the garden. I don't know why they tried to hide from an all-knowing God, which obviously didn't turn out great for them. Because of their actions, God punished the rest of human history with pain, death, and suffering. That fruit better have tasted good. Satan was expelled from heaven and now deceives people for the rest of human history. Adam and Eve set up a place to live outside the garden. God made a promise that one day he would send a Messiah to rescue the earth from sin. Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain was jealous that God favored his brother, so he had the brilliant idea to murder him. God banished Cain but promised to protect him. Adam and Eve had another son named Seth. One of Seth's descendants was named Noah. Noah's times were very wicked. Angels saw that human women were very beautiful, so they left heaven to marry them. Their children were giants, and these angels became the fallen angels. Oh, and there was also murder and stuff going on. God commanded Noah to build a giant boat so he could flood the whole earth and destroy all evil. When the boat was finished, a pair of all animals entered the ark. And on February 16th, negative 2348, the whole earth flooded. Noah and his family were on the ark for 5 months before finally stepping foot on dry land. God created the rainbow to symbolize a covenant with all of mankind not to destroy them again, and that he will always be there for us. I wish it still had the same meaning. Noah had 3 sons, and his middle child, Ham, decided to have a child with his mother. This child was named Canaan, and God cursed him. The people of Earth wanted to build a giant tower to make a name for themselves and reach the heavens. God didn't want them to finish this tower, so he threw them all over Earth and made sure that they spoke a different language. Shem, Noah's firstborn, had a descendant named Abram. Abram knew his wife Sarai was beautiful, so he pretended to be her brother while entering Egypt so he didn't get murdered. One of Abram's messengers informed him that his nephew Lot had been kidnapped. He traveled all the way north of Damascus to rescue him. It was here that God promised Abram his descendants would be like the stars in the sky, and changed his name to Abraham. After hearing this, Sarah, Sarai's new name, gave Abraham her servant Hagar as a wife because she thought she was too old for childbirth. But Sarah was abusive towards Hagar, so she fled to the desert. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring and told her to go back to Sarah. I'm not going to draw this part, but God ordered all the males to be circumcised, so they did that. 3 strangers visited Abraham and told him that Sarah would soon have a son. Meanwhile, Lot was living in the city of Sodom, which along with Gomorrah was very sinful. God sent 2 angels to destroy the city, and anyone who looked back would turn to a pillar of salt. This was unfortunately the case for Lot's wife. Lot's daughters survived though, but they were both childless, so they took turns getting their father drunk so they could have a child through him. Sarah finally gave birth to her son, who was named Isaac. Sarah thought that Ishmael, Hagar's son, would rule over Isaac because he was older, so she convinced Abraham to send them away into the desert once more. Ishmael was dying of dehydration, and once God opened Hagar's eyes, she saw fresh water. God ordered Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Abraham was about to do so when the angel of the Lord stopped him and gave him a goat instead. When Sarah died, Abraham bought a field and buried her in a cave on that field. Isaac decided to marry his cousin's daughter named Rebekah. Then Abraham died, so Isaac and Ishmael buried their father in the same cave as Sarah. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Isaac was now old and could barely see, so he wanted to give his blessing to Esau. Rebekah, however, favored Jacob and told him to take the blessing since Isaac could hardly see. But Esau was a hairy man, so Jacob wore a fur coat so Isaac wouldn't notice. When Esau heard this, he was furious with Jacob, and Jacob had to leave. Jacob met his cousin Rachel and wanted to marry her. Her father Laban only agreed to it if he worked on his land for 7 years. When he finally got to marry Rachel, it was dark outside. When he woke up, it turned out to be Rachel's older and less beautiful sister Leah. In order for Jacob to marry Rachel, he had to work another 7 years. This led to a lot of drama between the sisters. Leah bore Jacob 3 sons, but Rachel wasn't able to give birth, so she gave Jacob her servant Bilhah as a wife to give him 2 more sons, and now Leah wasn't able to give birth anymore, so she gave Jacob her servant Zilpah to give him 2 more sons, but then Leah was able to give birth again and gave him 2 more sons and a daughter, and finally Rachel was able to give birth and bore him a son named Joseph, who was the obvious favorite child. But then Jacob overheard Laban's sons spreading lies about Jacob to their father, so Jacob and his family fled Laban, who chased them. But they learned Esau was also heading towards them with 400 men. That night Jacob saw a mysterious man. They started wrestling each other, and Jacob had him pinned on the ground and wouldn't let go unless he blessed him. The man blessed him and said his new name was Israel. Jacob was in shock. Firstly, he had just had a wrestling match with God and won. Secondly, he had been spared even after all his wrongdoings. He looked up, Esau was there with 400 men. Luckily, Esau was overjoyed to see his brother again. Some random guy named Shechem saw Dinah, Jacob's only daughter, and did something terrible. He tried to make a deal with the brothers so he could marry her, but the brothers must have had their fingers crossed because 3 days later, Simeon and Levi entered his city and killed every man there. Obviously what they did was bad, but at least they were sticking up for their sister. Rachel ended up dying giving birth to her last son, Benjamin. Joseph was the obvious favorite, and his brothers were jealous. They plotted to kill him, but big brother Reuben shoots down the idea. Instead, they sold him, and Judah stained his jacket with blood to fake his death. Judah went on to marry the daughter of Shua and had 3 sons. His oldest, married Tamar. Was a wicked man, so God put him to death. I won't be saying what Onan did, but you can read it in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 to 10. After Onan died, Judah sent Tamar away. I won't tell the story either, sorry. When Judah found out his old daughter-in-law was pregnant and had his staff and goat, he realized his mistake. Tamar gave birth to twins. Meanwhile, Joseph had been granted everything Potiphar, Pharaoh's high-ranking official, owned. Potiphar's wife really liked him, but Joseph resisted her. Potiphar's wife told Potiphar her own version of the story, which got Joseph thrown into prison. Joseph was able to explain 2 people's dreams while in prison, which allowed him to decipher Pharaoh's dream and predicted a famine. So before the famine happened, the Egyptians stored tons of food to prepare. During the famine, Joseph's brothers, not recognizing him, came back to ask for food. Joseph made them bring Benjamin so he knew that he was okay. Then his servants filled all of the brothers' sacks with food. Joseph couldn't take it anymore, so he revealed himself to his brothers, and they brought Jacob to Egypt to see him. Joseph chose 5 of his brothers to convince Pharaoh to let them live in Egypt. When Jacob was about to die, he gathered all his sons for their blessings. They would become the 12 tribes of Israel. When Jacob died, Joseph was very upset, and before he died, he made sure to let his brothers know that there was no hard feelings about selling him.